have ground operations been delayed? As artillery booms and airstrikes continue, Israeli troops move closer to Gaza Strip. But will Israel invade Gaza? That's our top focus on India First. Let me now get you the latest in Israel's war on Hamas terror. On day 20, Israel has confirmed there are 224 hostages in the custody of Hamas at Gaza. Israel also says that their forces are now ready. A ground attack is imminent, and this has been said by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's also said that Gaza and Lebanese border evacuation can happen till the 31st of December. On the other hand, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas has called for mass protests against Israel's massive bombing, not just on Friday, but also on Sunday. Hamas also wants the Rafah border crossing with Egypt, the southern border, to be opened for evacuation of people. The United Nations has said that there is no place that is safe from Israeli bombing across the Gaza Strip, whether the north or the south. In fact, Libya has now taken a stance saying that all ambassadors should be withdrawn from countries that support Israel's war on Hamas terror. As far as the European Union is concerned, the EU has called for the establishment of a humanitarian corridor from where supplies can get into the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, both Russia and China, permanent members of the UN Security Council, they vetoed an American push for United Nations Security Council to act on the Israel-Hamas conflict. A strong anti-Hamas wording has been vetoed. North Korea, in fact, has accused Israel of committing war crimes in the Gaza Strip, and North Korea says this is happening under US protection. Japan, incidentally, Israel's ambassador to Japan met the foreign minister of Japan, where the Japanese foreign minister has sought a suspension of the bombing raid, something that Israel just doesn't agree to. Israel says anyone who's calling for the suspension of the bombing raid actually is helping Hamas regroup, rearm, and attack Israel once again. In the United States of America, the US House has strongly backed a pro-Israel resolution. So more weapons, more systems, and other supplies get into Israel from the United States of America. Joe Biden, the US president, has made a major statement. Joe Biden has said Hamas attacked Israel because of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, perhaps apprehensive about the normalization of ties, or at least efforts to normalize ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Big statement made by the US President Joe Biden. So the statement of the US President Joe Biden, he's actually dropped one of the biggest bombshells since this war started 20 days ago. He suggested that the Hamas terror attack could be a fallout of efforts to integrate in that region, Saudi Arabia and Israel trying to normalize their relationship. He, of course, said that this effort had started during the G20 summit in India, where the conversation was about India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. This was on the 9th and 10th of September in the national capital in New Delhi. So this regional cooperation between some of the world's biggest powers and integrating this part. Now, China's not very happy with it. Russia not very happy with it. Several other countries, including Iran and Turkey, are not very happy about it. But could such a major terror attack have been triggered by this? Let's try and figure this out.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall.
Massive bombshell by US President Joe Biden, exposing a clear India link to Hamas terror strikes. Biden says he's convinced that the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the immediate trigger for the attack on Israel.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. And we can't leave that work behind. And one more word on this. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank.
You know, let's face it, the most powerful world leader at this point of time, he's got two big carrier battle groups in the region, principally, because of the rising Iran threat. Let's face it, it's not really just to help Israel. The India-Europe Middle East Economic Corridor being one of the triggers, I don't know if it's a principal trigger, but one of the many triggers, is not hard to believe. I wouldn't dismiss it.
India's ambitious corridor, a rival of China's Belt and Road Initiative, aims to link India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Europe to Israel's Haifa port. Hamas is dead against Israel's integration and friendship with the Arab world.
The normalization of relations and tensions, especially between Israel and Saudi Arabia, sanctions lifted in part between US and Iran, the India Economic Corridor becoming a kind of, a sort of layer, almost an affirmation of that normalization process, must have been a strategic risk to countries like Iran that stand to lose, leverage and power in a region. Remember that conflict is power, and Iran has always represented that proverb in a very, very big way.
It was in September when Prime Minister Narendra Modi, flanked by President Biden and Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, announced the game-changing India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor.
भारत कनेक्टिविटी को क्षेत्रीय सीमाओं में नहीं मापता। सभी क्षेत्रों के साथ कनेक्टिविटी बढ़ाना भारत की मुख्य प्राथमिकता है। हमारा मानना है कि कनेक्टिविटी विभिन्न देशों के बीच आपसी व्यापार ही नहीं, आपसी विश्वास भी बढ़ाने का स्रोत है।
Today, I'm proud to announce that we've finalized the historic agreement for a new India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. As a key part of this corridor, we're going to invest in ships and rail that extends from India all the way to Europe, connected by the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel.
Has the Modi brainchild to revolutionize global business come as a red flag for Hamas? With Shiva Roor in Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
And I want to quickly bring in our finest team of reporters on Ground Zero in Tel Aviv. Shiv Arur joins me with more on the story. Shiv, how is Biden's claim or his statement where he says he's convinced there is no proof, but it's his instinct that seems to indicate this? How is it being viewed in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem?
Well, I think Joe Biden is on the money here. I think what he says completely aligns with what many experts have said around the world and on India Today, that, a normalization of the atmosphere, the normalization of relations and tensions, especially between Israel and Saudi Arabia, sanctions lifted in part between US and Iran, the India Economic Corridor becoming a kind of, a sort of layer, almost an affirmation of that normalization process, must have been a strategic risk to countries like Iran that stand to lose, leverage and power in a region. Remember that conflict is power, and Iran has always represented that proverb in a very, very big way. A region in upheaval means that countries like Iran, get to pull the strings, get to control proxies like Hezbollah, the Syrian army, the Hamas, etc. If you have a region of prosperity that facilitates trade, economic prosperity, progress, and a sort of comity and bonhomie between nations that have otherwise been adversarial towards each other, that means that groups like the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and Iran, the godfather of it all, lose that strategic power, that strategic leverage. And that is perhaps what Joe Biden is talking about. I don't think he's way off the mark. He says he's got no proof of it, but he is, let's face it, the most powerful world leader at this point of time. He's got two big carrier battle groups in the region, principally, because of the rising Iran threat. Let's face it, it's not really just to help Israel. It's also principally to be a deterrent against any possible direct hostilities shown by Iran that has been operating through its proxies. So the India-Europe Middle East Economic Corridor being one of the triggers, I don't know if it's a principal trigger, but one of the many triggers, is not hard to believe. I wouldn't dismiss it.
Let me also quickly bring in Shweta Singh, our colleague who's landed in Tel Aviv. And Shweta, it's virtually baptism by fire. I believe there were reports of rocket attacks close to Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv and rocket sirens all through the day in central Israel.
Gaurav, 20 days have gone by. The people of Israel have learned to live with this. They rush inside whenever there's the sound of the siren, and then as soon as there's a boom, an explosion that the rocket has been taken care of, they come back outside on these streets. Israel is alive and Israel trusts its forces. But on the 20th day, I feel the biggest job that they have is not just to fight back those terrorists, but how to get the hostages out of Gaza, out of the clutches of Hamas. At the same time, they're also fighting a battle of narrative where the entire world can be seen divided into two parts, where one which is supporting every action of Israel, and there are countries which do raise questions. So Israel not just has to fight Hamas. Today we even got an update that they've been trying to mend the fence which was torn apart by the Hamas terrorists as they were trying to enter into Israeli territory. The surveillance system has to be checked. The responsibility has to be decided. Benjamin Netanyahu himself spoke about it. Plus, last night there are confirmed reports of the IDF actually going into Gaza and neutralizing a few posts from where rockets were being fired onto Israel. So while 20 days have gone by, it seems the battle is far from over.
Shweta and Shiv, many thanks for joining me. Let's throw this open for a wider conversation on what's the road ahead for Israel's war on Hamas. How's the world viewing this? Yigal Nissel is Chief Operations Officer at Combat Anti-Semitism, joins me on the broadcast. Sushant Sareen is Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Also with me is Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. He's served extensively across the region. And I want to begin by asking you, Yigal Nissel, how do you view the US President's statement? The India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor was signed only on the 9th and 10th of September in New Delhi. These operations, we've been told in Israel, were planned for about a year, if not more. But was the signing of that agreement the trigger for this terror attack?
So first of all, thank you for having me. Without a doubt, it has a direct connection to the massacre on the 7th of October by the terror ISIS organization Hamas. And we all need to understand is that Hamas is a puppet organization from Iran. And as your reporter has said before, that Iran doesn't want to lose their power in the Middle East, the evil power of the Middle East. And when President Biden, with Saudi Arabia, together with India and the G20, announced this historical announcement for economy in the world, for people to go forward, for a future to our children, the evil country, Iran, and of course, together with the terror organization Hamas and of course Hezbollah in Lebanon, they could not accept it.
Okay.
And so, as the president has said, I think for sure there's a direct connection between the attack itself and the announcement.
So you see a direct connection. Sushant Sareen, an agreement that was signed on the 9th and 10th of September, training that, according to Israel, went on for a year plus. But in case Israel does commit ground troops into Gaza and the death toll, which has crossed 7,000 already in Gaza, mounts, will Hamas or Iran have succeeded in throwing a spanner in the works? Will Saudi Arabia also get involved in that normalization of ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia? Will that no longer happen in your appreciation?
Gaurav, first and foremost, I think the number of 7,000 is a little far-fetched. We have no evidence that it is indeed 7,000. We've seen dead bodies make phone calls also in images coming out of the Bollywood, as it's called. So I'll be careful on the numbers. But yes, I think there is a lot of devastation taking place in Gaza. And the way the narratives are being built around the Islamic world, there will be a lot of pressure on Islamic governments or Arab governments around the world to, take a much more forthright position on this conflict. Many of the Arab countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, even Jordan for that matter, have taken a pretty nuanced kind of a stand so far. They are not going ballistic as they would have 10, 15, 20 years back. And clearly, they are now operating in a new world and they're looking at a new world. There are other countries which, however, have a stake in the system to demolish whatever new was being built. So there is going to be that problem. And the more the war prolongs and more the casualties happen, that pressure will continue to grow. And I think that is going to be a trick. How do you manage the public narratives? How do you manage that war of narratives? I think that will be very critical in ensuring that many of the countries which are hoping that this is swift, quick, and you clean it up and then you go back to some kind of a peace process. Okay. Although I think that's also not going to be very easy, and they will go back to doing the business as usual. So I think for now it is a pause. But if this war elongates, if it war widens, then I don't know, then all bets are off.
Ambassador Dayal, it's already 20 days. World opinion, is it changing with those images coming out of the Palestinian-held, the Palestinian Gaza territory, the body bags, the quest for food, water, fuel, which Israel says no fuel because that fuel actually sends rockets into Israel. How do you see this pan out? Is Israel losing global support, or America, England, they will continue to stand strongly with Israel in the days and weeks ahead?
No, I don't think that Israel is losing support from the countries which were supporting it initially. In fact, global opinion is becoming more polarized. It was already polarized due to the Russia-Ukraine war, and this process of polarization has accentuated on account of the Hamas-Israel war. Now, let me categorically state that there are a number of countries which feel very, very strongly about the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. A terrorist attack cannot be condoned in any manner whatsoever. However, there are countries which were able to give it a sort of a religious twist and make it an Islam versus Judaism contest. Well, there are a few takers. Okay. This narrative surely has been promoted by certain interested parties, the Hamas itself, Iran, even countries like Qatar. But there is no doubt that the growing integration of Israel into this region is something that has begun to worry countries like Iran, countries like Qatar, and of course, the opponents of Israel wherever they are. And that is why when President Biden said that the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, the announcement of it could have triggered it off. I think he may be right, because the connection between India and Europe will pass through 4 Middle Eastern countries: UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan. And Israel. Out of these, UAE and Jordan already have diplomatic relations
Yes.
with Israel. Saudi Arabia is in the process of having talks and could normalize relations.
Yigal
This is
Nessil, has the United States actually asked Israel to press the pause button on the aerial bombing and on ground troops going into the Gaza Strip till the US has more THAAD missile defense systems and Patriot missile defense systems in the area? Is there an apprehension this battle could widen and Israel could use other proxies even to target the US like it already is in Syria and in Iraq?
So, without a doubt, the United States of America is our strongest allies, and we, of course, see Biden and his government and the army as our very close advisors, and we listen to them. But let me just make it clear that they don't tell us what to do. Friends doesn't tell to other friends what to do. They give us advice. And of course, we listen to some of it, but in the end, this is our country, Israel. In the end, we need to defend this country. And without a doubt, when President Biden is advising us, we of course listen to this. We can tell you that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government is looking for many, many aspects how to make sure that this war will end by Hamas will be destroyed. Point. This is what we need. We need Hamas to be destroyed, not only in Israel, also their money resources, also the leaders from living in different places in the world. We need to make sure for our children that Hamas will not exist anymore.
No,
and
but
that's why
how do you identify? Will you just take down leaders? Will you take down fighters? And how do you know who's a fighter and who's a Palestinian civilian? With the death toll mounting, aren't you increasingly coming under pressure with even allies now saying, press the pause button, let relief supplies go in?
So first of all, we are the only democracy in the Middle East, and we have one of the most moral armies in the world. Every attack that we do in Gaza, it's a defense attack, and we make sure we notify each building before to tell the residents to leave, and we also making sure that they're moving from one place to another to a safe place to make sure that the civilians will be separate than the terrorists. But I want to make sure one thing that everybody will understand, and I know that our friends in India understand that as well. We are in a war. This is about Israel's future. And in a war, sometimes, unfortunately, innocent people lose their life. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that. This is not because of Israel. This is because Hamas take them as hostage against us.
So, Shansarin, that's the point Israel repeatedly makes. If Hamas has been elected by the people of Gaza Strip, in whatever manner that election was had taken place, Hamas is responsible for the people of Gaza Strip. If Hamas returns the hostages, the bombing may stop. Is that an argument that's acceptable?
No, I don't think even if the Hamas was to return the hostages, the bombing would stop entirely, or the objectives of the state of Israel would change insofar as Hamas is concerned, at least insofar as Gaza is concerned. Maybe they'll keep hunting down the Hamas guys if they were to run away from Gaza and go into some other place and take refuge in some other country. But I think Israel simply cannot afford to let Hamas have a presence in Gaza anymore. So that objective is not going to change. Yes, it is possible that, there could be some kind of a pause, for example, if the hostages are going to be released. And I think that's going to be a very important negotiating point. But I also would think, Gaurav, you've been there, you've seen what Hamas did, the savagery and the barbarism of Hamas. After that, I'm not entirely convinced if the hostages, keeping the hostages is going to stop the Israeli attack on Hamas. I don't think that's a negotiating tactic or a negotiating tool that Hamas can take very far. I don't think it's going to stop the Israeli juggernaut.
I have the last 30 seconds on this part of the broadcast. Ambassador Dayal, in your appreciation, will Israel commit ground forces, or will Israel continue with these airstrikes and artillery strikes till the time the hostages are released? And many could be in tunnels. And are these bombs penetrating those tunnels, which may be 100 feet deep?
Well, Israel will certainly continue the aerial strikes. But please recall, Netanyahu pledged that he would end Hamas, that he would destroy Hamas. So after he feels that the aerial strikes have done their job, certainly ground forces are likely to go ahead.
Fair enough. We will continue this debate in the days and weeks ahead. To all my guests for joining me here on India First, many thanks. A quick break. Business Today with Sakshi Batra up next. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Get ready for an immersive journey into the heart of news, politics, and insights that matter. Join India Today now on WhatsApp. Scan the QR code.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. And we can't leave that work behind. And one more word on this. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, that pouring gasoline on fire is what it's like. This was a deal. The deal was made, and they're attacking Palestinians in places that they're entitled to be. And it has to stop. They have to be held accountable. And it has to stop now. I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall.
Governs the Gaza Strip stores fuel, both diesel fuel and other types of and benzene and other types of fuel. It's all inside the Gaza Strip, and there's enough for many days for hospitals and water pumps to run. Only the priorities are different. Hamas prefers to have all of the fuel for its warfighting capabilities, leaving civilians without it, and then international organizations ask for help. But who are they asking from? Are they asking Hamas, who has access to the fuel and governs the Gaza Strip, or are they blaming Israel or asking Egypt? I think that it's very important that they point their questions and their requests to the ones who can actually help them and actually govern the Gaza Strip. And that is Hamas, not Israel and not Egypt.
What they say to me is I have no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think not we, the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't happen. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, that pouring gasoline on fire is what it's like. This was a deal. The deal was made, and they're attacking Palestinians in places that they're entitled to be. And it has to stop. They have to be held accountable. And it has to stop now. I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, I have no proof of this, just my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall.
welcome. You're watching the Business Today show with me, Sakshi Batra. First up, the top news we're tracking for you tonight. Markets fall for a sixth consecutive day. Sensex down over 900 points, loses 3,280 points in 6 days. Tech Mahindra, Bajaj Twins, HDFC Bank and M&M lead the fall today. IT, metals and banking sectors tumble the most.